It's virtually impossible to imagine a Judas Priest concert today without a Harley-Davidson on stage. But the truth is that it wasn't always the case, and Judas Priest's signature move could have actually looked completely differently.
Can you believe that?
So today, let's take a look at the history of everyone's beloved part of a Judas Priest concert, discuss how it actually came to be and some of the strange things about it, and then take a closer look at the latest Harley Rob Halford rode on stage. Here you go. Real quick guys, as always, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our Defenders of the Faith series is of course to start a conversation. But alright, let's do it. In November of 1978, Judas Priest dropped an album so sharp that it had to have two names to contain it. Now, most people today of course know it as Killing Machine, but when it crossed the Atlantic, their American label panicked. Apparently the title was a bit too murderous for the United States record stores back then. And so in February of 1979, the same album landed in the United States under the now iconic name Hellbent for Leather. All thanks to one song that would eventually become a Priest anthem and one of the most recognizable stage moments in metal history. Written solely by Glenn Tipton, which, by the way, back in the 1970s was a regular thing for Judas Priest, as back then they did not yet agree that all three of the main songwriters would always be credited as, well, composers of a song, but that's a topic for a completely different video. Anyways, Hellbent for Leather wasn't just a song, it was the soundtrack to Judas Priest's brand new leather-clad identity. At one point, Tipton described it as a story about a godlike feature, faster than anything on earth, part man, part machine, living right on the edge but never losing control. Which, by the way, also weirdly fits the definition of another creature created by Judas Priest roughly 12 years later. But when it comes to Hellbent for Leather, well, in all honesty, it actually does make quite a lot of sense that this song became quite popular amongst people who are no strangers to somewhat fast and reckless way of life. And very soon, the song would not just be a fan's favorite, it would become the moment that would forever change and define Judas Priest live shows. Oh, by the way guys, did you notice that our metal Grinch is back? Well, obviously, because it's almost Christmas. So if you would like to metal up your Christmas with merch that has a lot of different clues and hints to the legacy of our favorite bands, including Judas Priest, of course, and of course support this channel, just know that you can order it via a link in the description to this video. And I'll be more than happy to send it pretty much anywhere across the world. As I mentioned already, it's virtually impossible to imagine a Judas Priest concert without it today. But back in the day, Motorcycle Moment in Hellbent for Leather simply did not exist. And instead of that one, Judas Priest fans were actually eagerly awaiting another song for an iconic moment at a Judas Priest show. And that one, of course, being Genocide, as it was during that track, when Rob Halford would go up on stage with a machine gun and would start shooting the audience with blank cartridges. Which, by the way, he almost went to jail once for. But that's a topic for a completely different video. But nevertheless, yeah, in the late 70s, it was Genocide, which was considered an iconic moment at every Judas Priest show. Until everything changed. And who knows, maybe if not for the problems with authorities related to a machine gun on stage, and thanks to a weird accident, Judas Priest concert would never be associated with revving up motors. On October 29th in 1978, Priest were about to play Hellbent for Leather live for the very first time at Victoria Hall in Hanley, England. And the outside of that venue was of course simply packed by bikers, which was usual back in the late 70s, and which is actually still usual today. And so, as Rob himself later on recalled, several hours before the show, he had a genius idea.
It seemed like such a simple idea.
And so he went to the parking lot and spoke to the bikers, saying that it would be cool to bring up one of their motorcycles up on stage during their new song. And those guys simply loved the idea, loved it so much that they actually started arguing whose bike they would give to Rob. And so in the end, Rob Halford would simply go with the biggest one around. And when Rob Halford later that night rolled it up on stage under the dim lights, the crowd simply lost its collective mind. And that's exactly when Judas Priest knew that they stumbled upon something that would define Judas Priest concerts forever. Right from the start of their motorcycle saga, Judas Priest did everything they could to make a bike a part of the Judas Priest identity. And that happened literally from the start. When Priest arrived in Dublin for the first ever show in Ireland on July 1st, 1979, the authorities completely freaked out about the motorcycle. Given the political climate at that time, they feared that the bike might incite violence in the crowd. And so the officials told Priest, no motorcycle on stage. To which Rob Halford responded, no bike, no show. Which is quite ironic, because cancelling a show back then could have caused way more of a chaos than a motorcycle on stage. And so when Rob Halford finally says that he definitely refuses to perform if Judas Priest fans are not given a full Priest experience, the authorities simply backed down. And that incident actually became more than just a statement, because back then, although information of course did not spread as quickly as it does today, well, still, many fans did go to see Judas Priest live specifically for that moment. And keeping that newly founded tradition was just as essential for Judas Priest as it was to play Hellbent for Leather itself. And the same went for one of the shows when Judas Priest were supporting Status Quo on that same tour. When after the police told Rob he was breaking the law by bringing motorcycle up on stage and ordered him not to do it or he would go to jail for that. And instead of backing down, Rob Halford would simply wait until no one saw them bringing motorcycle up backstage and rode it up on stage anyways. Which, by the way, he wasn't arrested for in the end, specifically because police simply was too afraid of riots in the city. But the truth is that those early stories helped Judas Priest transform from a heavy metal band to metal gods and become the most influential heavy metal band on the planet by the end of 1979. And the truth is that motorcycle up on stage was a huge part of that success. But as we all know, not every ride Rob Halford had was smooth. The problems actually began right in the very beginning. During the Killing Machine tour in Minneapolis, Rob rode out as usual and went straight off the front of the stage into the orchestra pit. And that was in 1979. He thankfully walked out of this with just cuts and bruises, but it did scare the people in the front row quite a lot.
What?
And then came, of course, the infamous Painkiller tour finale in Toronto, which, by the way, for the record, is one of the most chaotic shows in Judas Priest history overall. It was the end of an exhausting tour. The band was dealing with the emotional fallout of the Rano trial, schedules were a mess, and backstage was a pure confusion. And so when the intro tape for the encore hit a bit earlier than usual, Rob Halford naturally thought that it was his cue to enter the stage. And so he did. But instead of emerging triumphantly in front of the audience, he hit his head on the stairs and fell off that bike unconsciously. But the craziest thing is that because of the crazy fog, no one from the band themselves actually saw this happening. So they kept on playing until Glenn Tipton accidentally stumbled upon Rob's body, which actually makes this the first and the only instrumental rendition of the legendary Hellbent for Leather in Judas Priest history.
But still, here we are.
And then nearly the same thing happened in 2011 during the Epitaph tour, when during the São Paulo show Rob rode out for the encore and the bike lost balance right as he stopped. And gazillion other small and not so small incidents. And here's the thing. It is those incidents and those stories, all of which added small bits into the Judas Priest lore. And it is those stories which made Judas Priest one of the greatest heavy metal band on the planet. As the truth is that it is those imperfections and it is those over-the-top things, such as riding a motorcycle on stage, which all of us metalheads love this genre for. And Judas Priest knew how to capitalize on it better than anyone in the industry. And then is that much has changed since 1979. Back in the 1970s, riding a Harley on stage was something way over the top. Something which authorities tried to ban, and something that heavy metal fans were traveling thousands of miles to witness for themselves. But the craziest thing is that even today, more than 45 years later, in the era of crazy pyro and gigantic screens, in the era when we're all used to heavy metal bands, and at this point not only heavy metal bands giving insane performances, still Seeing Rob Halford riding a Harley during the intro to Hellbent for Leather is something that makes thousands of heavy metal maniacs go absolutely nuts. Every night. And still, thousands of Judas Priest fans argue online about the makeover a Judas Priest Harley may get on the upcoming Judas Priest tour. Because the truth is that at this point, it is much more than just about theatrics. It is an essential part of not only Judas Priest, but of the heavy metal history. And we're truly blessed to still be able to witness it today in the 21st century. But anyways, how many times have you witnessed Rob Halford riding a Harley on stage? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we'll prevail. Slava Ukraini!